Doing that. Okay. Recording in progress.
You're listening to the MLS Fantasy Insider, bringing you weekly tips, tricks, and advice for the official MLS fantasy game.
Welcome to MLS Fantasy Insider. I'm your host, Reed. Oh, no, wait. It's not Reed. It's actually Blaine filling in tonight, solo or duo, right?
Yeah.
How's it going, Blaine?
Good. How are you?
Doing great. Doing great. I feel like we just took off the training wheels.
Yeah.
I'm not quite sure how to go, but we're gonna do it. I guess we should say that Ranchinator Tyler will be joining us later, right?
Yep, he should be.
Okay.
As he gets home from work, which is in 10 to 15 minutes.
Perfect. So we're gonna get into some things about last week, and then when Tyler gets here, we'll talk about some of our picks for this round. Let's go ahead and start with how we fared this past weekend. Blaine, how'd you do?
Not too bad. I got a 75 for the round. That was good enough for a top 800 week rank. I mean, that's just right in the middle of the pack, but I moved up in the overall, which is always nice. Missed my captain pick. I didn't have Heel. So I lost some points there, but I took Gald instead of Heel, so that was an extra 1 point, but I just didn't captain him. So, and then fully selling out on the bench with Orlando was huge. That was 26 points right there to bring in. So I mean, I'll take it across the board. I made a couple of changes. My goalkeepers were absolutely terrible, but I mean, 75 and going positive all across the board. Only lost one head-to-head, and that was probably the toughest match I had. I'll take it this week. It wasn't as good as it could have been, but it definitely worked out. And final thought on that was Chicharito beat out Vela, which is what I was hoping for. I know a lot of people were like, oh, it's Vela, it's El Trafico. No, you go with the home team on that one.
Yeah, I had a rough week. I had a lot of tinkering, and then that's not true. I tinkered once, and then I tinkered myself into a hole where the only way to get out of it was to just continue to tinker. I had a 69, a lot of bad decisions. Took my captain off Heel. I didn't like that lineup when it came out, and I ended up captaining Vela. I actually love Vela in El Trafico. I don't care what stadium because they're 8.5 miles away. But that really burned me. I mean, I had a lot of other just kind of not great misses. My Red Bull defender on my bench got 0 points. Everyone in my midfield basically got 5. Juicy, Ruiz, Bender. Gazdag was a real disappointment. He's been on a goal scoring streak and stopped this week, so that was unfortunate. But I picked up Gutman over Lennon, and it's so sad to feel like a 5-point defender was like a win for the week. But I feel like everyone got burned by Lennon this week, and in order to afford an additional midfielder instead of a scrub, I downgraded to Gutman, which ended up giving me 3 extra points. But I was at 110 overall, and I fell to 149, which isn't a huge fall. I didn't think I could make Champions League this chunk of the round, but I want to stay within touching distance of it for the next section. So I'm still close, but just not a good week for me. And I should also say, weird week, right? Like if you looked at Team of the Week, really strange week for a lot of the people that put up some crazy points. I mean, we got a couple of regular-ish names that snuck in there at the end with like Yemi, Chara. I think Gald was on Team of the Week, which is something we're more used to. But like, hat trick hero Campana, strange. Jeremy Abobasi with 13. Just some really Hector Jimenez, who doesn't even start for Austin, putting up a 10. Just a really kind of interesting week. So if you went non-chalk, I feel like this was the week for you, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Yeah, okay. Reed, also, it's like you guys were twinning, also got a 75. He missed a did not play player on the bench, which is always brutal to realize that, after the fact. But we've all been there. So yeah, decent week for both of you. Not as decent for me, but that's why we just keep moving into the next round, right? So, some other takeaways that we have from this past round. Read notes here that he talked about Lennon and his consistency last week, and we definitely didn't see it this week. It was a tricky game for Atlanta if you actually watched it. I got to watch it. Their formation was a little different. He didn't get up as much, but yeah, those bonus points for him were just not there. Is what Reed's noting, and then I'll add on to mine and say that I don't think that Charlotte is the new Cincy. I think that's what we kind of said this coming in, and when we talked about our season preview, right? We were like, the coach doesn't even like their own roster. Like, this is going to be a nightmare, and they're really competing with some of these teams now. New England isn't the New England that we're used to, so how much do you put into that win? But Atlanta was hurt, but still, they're pulling off these decent results and producing these kind of fantasy sweet spots with Bender, the shutout, Swiderski. So I think to write off Charlotte as the new Cincy, it was a little incorrect, at least for now. Austin at home continues to be legit. I mean, it wasn't a smash of a win, and it didn't produce a ton of fantasy points for a lot of us, but I think that's becoming a real mainstay of a homestand. And as they start to get some more big powerhouse Western Conference names in there, I think you can continue to bet on them. And then the last thing I'll throw in there is stop fading Toronto. I think you start fading New England, except for Heel. I mean, we'll never fade him. He's got to get a couple weeks of 2s and 3s before we all jump off that, I think. But, I'm not sure what's going on there. We kind of talked about this, over chat over the weekend, that it's just not the same looking New England. It's not the same stat New England. And then on that other side of it, like I said, Toronto, we all kind of backed off of because they were just kind of a dumpster fire to start the season. But they're putting up points. Osorio's putting up points. Some of those defenders are putting up points. They're scoring from random people. So they're not a must-have team yet. But I think it's time we start giving them a little bit of a better look, especially going into a weekend like this when they're at home.
Yeah, definitely. I've got a few other ones. I was shocked to see Portland finding some more scoring form.
Mm-hmm. Me too.
One of those weird teams, like we've been kind of betting against them for goals.
Mm-hmm.
They're a team we've been picking defenders against a little bit just because their attack has been a little anemic at times.
Mm-hmm.
But they found it this week. Now it is Vancouver, but
and one was a PK, but still, like Nias-Goda got on the score sheet.
Yeah,
I haven't seen that.
On the road in Cascadia, which is always a tough game. Like that's not just some pushover with any other team playing Vancouver.
Right.
So that one shocked me a little bit. And then I got to echo the New England stuff. Like they're in free fall at this point. Who knows how far they're going to fall before something drastic happens. I know we talked about it, but I have to wonder if Bruce Arena's on the hot seat anytime soon. I mean, he's Arena. He's got a lot of leverage, but when you've got these players and you spend the money like they did to go get a few more, like where does this go? Where do you go from here? How do you get this team back around? And I don't see it right now. I don't see the leadership. I don't see the formations. I don't see any changes or any tinkering to bring this team together. They're lesser than the sum of their parts right now.
Well, and like you and I said, Bo and Buxa haven't been healthy, and when they've been playing, they haven't been performing. And that, for fantasy purposes, really affects everything, right? It kind of starts up there with them, and Heel will still pick up these bonus points because that's what he's going to do, right? But if you can't get a goal in, and he doesn't produce a goal, Josie hasn't been able to get significant minutes, which I think a lot of us thought he might. And I saw a lot of teams try to fill in with the cheap New England defenders this past weekend, thinking, oh, we'll slot them in because they're playing at Miami, and man, did that burn a lot of people. Luckily, I didn't do that, but I think a lot of people got burned by some of those cheap defenders, thinking, that was an easy shutout. But the Knighton pick made sense schedule wise, but if you picked up a cheap New England defender, woof, this weekend. So
Yeah. I mean, unless you've got Bai or Jones on one of those weeks where they go get offensive points, I mean, it's almost can't take him at this point.
Yeah. So I mean, we'll see how they look at home against a kind of hot Charlotte team this week, but they're besides heel right now. It's not a team I'm looking at, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. All right. Shall we get into some housekeeping? This is the weird. I guess we should say, because I skipped over it, that Reed is not here tonight, and that he has some familial obligations to take care of, and we're just going to hold down the fort without him. So now to get into housekeeping without him just feels wrong, but I guess we should.
Yeah.
All right. So MLSFI Experts Invitational, Christian back on top, says record 5-1-0. And then Champions League Pro Rel, is that yours or is that his?
Champions League is Reed.
Okay. So Patrick is on undefeated in that tier. And Reed kindly and humbly also notes that Patrick beat him in the Experts League this week. So kudos to Patrick, just cleaning house. And then in my league, the Veterans League, still Almeida's vibes. Firestone, I think since week 2, they've been holding it down in the Veterans League. So continuing the dominance. And then Development League.
Yeah, we've got an upset here. The undefeated team, or the perfect teams, we're down to 1. That's Warsaw Riders, and I would butcher that name, so I'm not even going to try.
Okay.
Warsaw Riders jumped up. FC Red Bull Green Mountain ended up losing 1 game this week.
Ooh, okay.
First drop, and then we've got a bunch of teams at 5-0-1, but we've got a new leader and the only perfect team remaining.
Very nice. Lots of shakeups down in our Development League. That's awesome. All right, so that's everything that happened last week. Or sorry, I should be more like last round. So let's get into what we're looking at for the upcoming week and our upcoming round. So this round doesn't start till Saturday. We have a 3 p.m. Eastern kickoff between Montreal and Vancouver, a little Canadian rivalry up there on April 16th. There is technically no double game week, but it's worth noting that both NYCFC, who play on Sunday, and Seattle, who play the last game of Saturday, have CCL against each other midweek on Wednesday in New Jersey. So, not sure how much rotation you'll see. Both those teams play home games over the weekend, but still, it's the second leg. I expect them both to put out their best lineup midweek. And really go for that CCL, final game against, either Pumas or I can't remember the other team. So I expect, like a full-on double game week style from the two of them, but no true double game week for fantasy. But that, can come into play for who you pick up over the weekend. So, suspension and injuries, I feel bad that we say it every time, but it's so much more efficient than where go to the master list.
Yeah. Ranch isn't here yet, but he was kind enough to get me the list before he left work.
Perfect.
Big note is Mabiala got his first start since returning from injury. Mm-hmm. So that's a big shakeup on the Portland back line. Watch for anything there. You could, if you're going with Portland defense, watch their lineup closely because there could be some rotation. Red cards and suspensions. Salcedo got a red card for TFC. Same with Gutierrez for Chicago. And then big news this week is Dominguez out of Austin picked up an indefinite suspension for something off field. Don't know what it was. They're refusing to say at the moment, but he is out for the foreseeable future. So take that for what it is. As we talk up Austin, they are down one of their key playmakers.
Yep. DP, if I'm not incorrect.
Yeah, I think he is.
Yeah. So I'm sure something will come out about it. But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what it is for fantasy. He is not someone to pick up right now. So couple of little nagging injuries I think to watch out for. Kamar Lawrence started for Minnesota. Looked like he picked up a knock. Antonio Carlos, I haven't seen if he will be back this week for Orlando. I'm not sure what else of the big notable names. I said this off air. Joao Paulo should be healthy for this week, and he took a knock midweek last week. Same with Rui Diaz, Morris Ladero, all should be healthy for the weekend, given rotation.
Yeah, I think Antonio Carlos was listed as 4 to 6 weeks.
Yeah.
As of last week. Some questionable ones that were on the list. Brandon Bai for New England. Brian Rodriguez subbed early. Maybe it was precautionary, but that's...
No, he got hurt.
Yeah. I'm sure. Gazdag came off holding his hamstring, but that was kind of a later game, so who knows. Higuain did not play. Kind of questionable for this weekend.
Mm-hmm.
Matt Hedges was a halftime sub. And then we've got a couple of other ones that are big news. Joseph Martinez, we're looking at 2 to 3 months. It's the same injury and surgery that Ladero had last year.
Mm-hmm.
So we may not see much of Martinez until playoffs, honestly. Just depends on how their season's going and how close they are to the playoff race.
Mm-hmm.
And then Matarrita is ankle injury and out for 6 months.
Oof.
That's a big blow to our Cincinnati options.
Yeah, that left wing is going to suffer.
Yeah, we liked him going forward. He made the attackers better. He was a vital piece of what good thing Cincinnati had going.
I mean, he was fantasy gold at NYCFC, and it didn't quite start clicking at Cincy until now. So, yeah, that's a big blow for them, and definitely for fantasy for sure.
Yeah.
So, yeah. All right. Well, no call-ups. We're not there. And perfect timing as we are just about to get into our player targets for this round. Welcome, Tyler.
Hello.
Literally perfect timing. We are just moving into our picks for this round.
Yeah, I was listening. I want to throw in before we go.
Yeah.
First off, I got 87 on the week. It was a differentials week.
Gotta say it. No, you have to. Good for you, man.
Yeah. So I'm all about that.
Yeah.
And then the other thing I wanted to say, you guys were saying New England is bad defensively. I went Renix, which was the goal forward. Scorer. Yeah, he happened to be the goal scorer, but it's the forward just felt like the right choice there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. You guys already go over injuries and all that?
I think we touched on all the big ones.
Okay.
Blaine, would you say? Yeah.
Yeah. I used everything in your list, so if we missed one, it's your fault.
All right. I'll take it.
Well, kudos on the 87. That's I think for this week. On a normal week, I feel like you'd still think that's pretty decent, but for this week, that was what was your overall for the week rank? Did you know?
I think I'm top 50.
I was gonna say
25,
yeah, that should be.
I finished 47. It looks like
on the week or over.
On the week.
Get it? Nice, very cool. All right. Yeah, it's a great score. Okay, so moving into round 7. This is the last round, we should say, for Champions League for this section, this quarter. So if you are anywhere,
it is. Last week was the last.
Was last week?
This is a new week. Yeah, this is a new week.
I thought it ended in 7. Oh, here we go. That's even better. I was just gonna say start throwing it at the wall, but no. Now the best 50 players are out of your way, and so the new hunt starts here. So I kind of mentioned this at the top. I moved down to 159. So for me, it's touching distance if I play it right, because the first 50 are out of my way. So now really, I'm almost breaking top 100. Yep. So if you make the right moves and have enough couple big weeks, that's this next stretch it's kind of like a start over. And I love that, right? Like this past week was a real pain in the ass for me. And that's what I love about this Champions League format is I was pissed at what I did. And now I have a whole new reason to not get mad about what just happened because I have another stretch of weeks that I could get in the Champions League. So, all right. So this week is interesting. We kind of talked about it off air in chat, but just some weird home and away matchups. And I know we always talk about home versus away, but it'll come up with our player picks for sure. Some of the keepers and defenders, we didn't have a ton of majority picks this week. I will say that the only person in any category that all three of us picked was Heel. But we had a bunch of picks that overlapped with two of us. So some of the majority picks that we have for keepers and defenders is Guzan and Stefan Fry. Now they play at opposite ends of the week, where Seattle is the latest game on Saturday and Atlanta's kind of earlier, midday on Saturday. And then for defenders, at least two of us pick, or have someone from Philadelphia who's traveling up to Toronto, or someone from Seattle who are playing at home against Miami. So not a ton of consistency across from many of us. But Blaine, why don't you go ahead and tell us some of the players that you're looking at for clean sheets, keepers and defenders?
Yeah, this week was definitely different, and I could see why when I see your guys' picks, they're there. But my clean sheet shouts, I like Atlanta. I know they had a kind of a rough week, but they're at home. I kind of like Minnesota this week. I think it's a decent matchup, and I think they're one of those teams that can put it together. And then I really like Columbus as a clean sheet shout this week. I think they're one of the stronger defenses, and it hasn't always shown because they've played some really tough matchups. But this is an Orlando team that has not been scoring as regularly as we would like. We've got a lot of good fantasy options here, but I think you put Orlando on the road at this Columbus game, and it's a recipe for a shutout. And so I kind of went that way with my picks, and so I've got Gazan to the Minnesota keeper. I like the scheduling on that one. You've got the early Atlanta game, and then Minnesota's so late in that game, in that day, and you don't have any overlap. I would go Columbus, but there's a little bit of overlap. Those games are only an hour and a half kickoff apart, so it won't quite finish. Which maybe if I see Atlanta give up the early goal, I can go ahead and do something like that. But right now I've got it as Minnesota just because I think that's a really safe option for me.
Yeah.
And then defender-wise, I'm just going to keep picking on some guys that I like. And I think Barrera is going to be my Columbus coverage. He's a little bit cheaper than Mensah. He's getting forward in the attack. I think this is one where he can really shine. I'm going to take Lennon again. I think it's Cincinnati. You go. I actually didn't have him last week. I stuck with the Vancouver guy, and so picked up a couple extra points there. But I'm going to go back to Lennon this week for that one. It's Cincinnati. They're not scoring as regularly. I do think they can get goals, but I think Lennon can get forward and do a lot of damage on this one. And then my third one's kind of up in the air. I didn't like a lot of this, so I'm actually thinking about playing Calvo against Nashville at home. San Jose is just so Jekyll and Hyde, and you never know. But as Reed says, you go for the bonus points. And I think the way Nashville plays is going to feed into some bonus points for him. And there is a potential for that clean sheet there. Nashville's not been scoring as well on the road. I know they just got 2 against Kansas City, but that's 2 against Kansas City. They're giving up goals to everybody right now.
You say that, but they've only been shut out once, which was in Dallas.
True.
Orlando also has only been shut out once in Chicago.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm kind of looking at those, but my third defender this week is going to be a bonus point guy, and it's kind of going to be budget related. Calvo 6.5. I have nothing in the bank at the moment, so I'm kind of tapped out there. And as I make changes this week, I may get a little bit more to spend on another defender, but it'll probably be one of those top clean sheet teams that I've got picked out already.
Yeah, I like it. I'm talking myself in and out of Atlanta. Hearing you say that they are a decent clean sheet shout. I mean, they got scored on Olympico, so you take that for what you will. Whether you think that's all on Guzan or you think that's just pure, brilliance. That was the only goal, so they still held down a pretty decent defensive performance in that stadium. But Brandon Vasquez is the highest pointed forward in fantasy by like 4 or 5 points. He's still top 3 in shots taken. I don't know why we don't take it seriously, but I feel like that Atlanta game might be a trap game, because looking at it at home in the Benz, my instinct is, okay, how many Atlanta people can I load up on? But if you really look at what Cincy's been able to do this year, they are on the road and that has made a difference. But the stats somewhat back not putting all your eggs in that Atlanta basket. So I like Lennon for the bonus points for sure. And I got to say, the way that they played, and maybe I'm totally misreading and haven't watched enough Atlanta, but when I watched Atlanta this weekend, having Almeida and Moreno back in the midfield, it looked like the formation shifted a little for where Lennon had been playing, and both he and Gutman got up a similar amount from what I was watching, and Gutman actually ended up with more bonus points. Lennon's still taking those free kicks and taking other placed things, and I think that still makes him a better value. But in the formation that they put out this weekend, it made it so from a fantasy perspective, you could kind of pick between the two of them, honestly, barring the set piece taking, which obviously Lennon does. So I'm honestly considering, instead of either going Guzan or Room, they're the same price. They're both 6.3, I think, into Stefan Fry, who has also gone down because Seattle can't keep a shutout and MLS play to save their life. And so I think that's where I might land. There's not a ton of shutouts that jump out at me this week. I like LAFC. Sorry, I don't know that the state that SKC's in. I could see a shutout there, and I see some of those wingbacks getting good points. I do like Seattle, depending on how much they rotate. Also, we didn't say this in injuries. Yamar is going to be out for the weekend. He's definitely out for midweek. It would shock me to see him back for Sunday or Saturday. And as a result, when Seattle doesn't have Yamar, they have Javier Arriaga, who's a brilliant tackle away from a red at all times. And Reagan, who isn't 12, but I think he is. He is a fresh-based draft pick. And that's their center back pairing right now. So while I do feel like that's a good clean sheet shout, having the midweek game, depending on rotation, if you go Seattle anywhere on the field, you have to have a backup choice because there's a chance they rotate. I kind of like DC United this week. Austin played a great game at home. On the road, they tend to struggle a little bit more. DC has some extra rest, a ton of extra rest, which can sometimes be a bad thing, but I'm hoping it won't. Hoping that gets some of their injured players like Russell back into the lineup. Those defenders are kind of cheap. I think Nahar and Brad Smith are both 6.6 right now, and compared to everybody else who've been rising, that's good. And then I kind of like the Philly-Toronto game. I haven't been paying enough attention to the Toronto defense because there was a point in time where they were terrible and only had 4 defenders listed in fantasy. But there's a lot of cheap options there that I'm considering for my bench. And then I don't know when I'm going to stop paying for Kai Wagner because he's just so expensive. But it was so painful to me to watch this past round Harriel get the same points for so much cheaper, right? Don't you guys feel like that? It's like you bought something and then someone else got it on sale, right? So someone I was playing in head-to-head saved $3.5 million because they had Harriel and I had Kai Wagner and got the same amount of points. So those are just some things that I'm kind of paying attention to, right? The Lennon and Gutman dynamic is these players that get extra bonus points cost this much money because they get those bonus points, but are there somewhat comparable, not just a cheap clean sheet shout, but are there some comparable options out there? And so that's what I'm kind of looking at with the Philly and Toronto, but I don't know that I want to touch that game defensively. So Tyler, what do you got?
You kind of touched on everything that I want to talk about.
Sorry.
I'm starting leading with Fry as my back end of my keeperoo, and then my front end, back end, whatever. And then my fallback is gonna be Crapo, because I'm the same
money.
way. I know, actually not as much as you would think.
Yeah.
I mean, it's 7.6 and 6.6.
Oh yeah, that's not bad.
It's not as bad as it was a few weeks. Week 1, no.
Yeah.
But I'm the same way. I don't see a whole lot of clean sheets. I'm kind of going for bonus points. The only real clean sheet I see is Philly because they're still an unbeaten team. So I have Wagner and Harriel right now. And then I'm obviously pairing my goalie. So I have Nuhu with Fry and I have Hollingshead with Crapo. Hollingshead just gets so involved in the attack. I feel like he's going to be a good option.
Big time. And Palacios is back for them too, as kind of an other side of the ball.
Yeah, I think. I don't know. I didn't see where he lined up. Was he left and Hollingshead right last time?
No, I think it was the other way around.
Whatever. Either way.
Yeah.
But I mean, you saw what he did against Vancouver. He can pop off at any moment.
Yep.
He just needs the headway to do it. There's a few options I've kind of been looking at for bonus point floors, kind of like what Blaine was touching on. I've kind of looked at people like Calvo. I've looked at let me pull up my list. I don't have him on my team right now, but point.
Who's the Toronto defender that all of you guys picked up the same week and no one told me?
Is it Petrasa?
Yeah.
I didn't grab him. Estevez is another one I'm looking at. Like
for Colorado.
Yeah, he's putting up a ton of bonus points, and he's 8.2. He's kind of expensive, but he's also on the road. It's hard this week. DC is another one I've been looking at, like you said, but it's hard to pick this defenders this week. I feel like I'm gonna be a 3 defender with just two scrubs and do an auto-roo. Yeah,
this is a week where I think I'd like 9 midfielders. So let's go ahead and just slide into midfielders because I think that's kind of where we all have too many names that we want. The majority names that we talked about, like I said, Heel's the only one on all 3 of our teams right now. But at least 2 of us have Mukhtar, Mihalovic, Christian Roldan, barring rotation. So for myself, I like Hani Mukhtar this week. He's just been quietly. I think you had him in your sneaky pick article, Ranch, and I love that.
And I grabbed him last week.
Yeah, and I love that you were like, I understand that this shouldn't be like a sneaky name, but no one's picking him up because he's not doing exactly what he was doing last season, but he's still producing.
It's because he's been on the road.
Yeah, so,
I think when he gets home, it's double digits all the way.
Yeah, that was what I was just gonna say. So Nashville's on the road until round 10? It's a good stretch.
It's 9.
Okay. So that's a lot of road games before they get into their new stadium, but he's just silently picking up 7s, 8s, 9s, not really making a huge dent, but still producing some consistent points, right? He's not just chalking up 5s. He's getting a couple more. I like him this week against San Jose. San Jose creates chaos. I feel like he does well in that environment. If someone's going to contribute, it's going to be him. So I do like him on the road, even though it is a road game. I'm still going to pick Heel because he's a seasoned guy who should be able to cut up an expansion team, at least point production wise. But I'm a little hesitant just because of how New England's been playing. But I still like him this week. I really liked Almeida. It was nice to see Moreno back. I know a lot of people usually gravitate towards him in that Atlanta midfield. But I really liked what I saw, and Almeida actually outproduced Moreno, I think just by a point. But without Josef, I just like him right now more in that midfield. And I think you could have a conversation about either of them. But for me, I do like Almeida. I like Zella this week a lot. I'm sure Blaine will touch on that more. And then Mihalovic and Osorio are my 2 Canadian counterparts that I literally keep flopping back and forth between. Jonathan Osorio is another one who's just been quietly picking up points without a ton of hype. And Mihalovic is kind of the opposite. He had some like hot fire weeks and then has cooled just a little. But you know, Montreal's playing another Canadian team. Those games tend to get a little, frantic. So I kind of like Mihal a little bit more. But Osorio is definitely, a good name to throw out there. But I keep switching them back and forth all day. So, Tyler, what do you like and who do you like and why?
I'm on the same boat with you with Almada. He's like a better version of Barco, and I'm gonna throw that out there. I think someone one of the Atlanta supporters was saying that in the Discord that it's like Barco, but he's producing more.
But he didn't sleep with anybody's wife.
Point.
Nope.
Wow.
Too soon.
Wow.
He's got time. He just got there. It's a negative point.
Okay. Yeah, no, he gets the bonus points, whereas Barco didn't. He was kind of goaler bust, but he could bust, or he could boom like crazy. Barco would. Amada has the floor and he can boom.
Yep.
Moreno and someone else was, I think the same person was saying, it looks like Moreno's gonna be good in low scoring games because he gets the bonus points, and Almada will be good in high scoring games because he gets in the attack more often. So it's kind of like this one against Cincy. I think it's high scoring, so I'm going Almada over Moreno this week. And then I have Mukhtar, same reasons you said. Heal, you can't fade because it's heal. I'm gonna ruin my own article because I was gonna write about Christian Roldan, but I saw that Blaine had him, so I'm like, oh well, it's ruined now. Gotta put him in there. This guy has, I'm including CCL in this.
Yeah.
He has 7 assists and 1 goal in the last 10 games to start this season. Like, if that doesn't scream like MVP contender, I know it's obviously not regular season, but that's ridiculous in 10 games.
Yeah, he's playing a little differently than he did last season, right? Because they had to fill in for Jordan Morris, and so he's getting to play as a real winger on the same side of as his brother, and that chemistry is unreal. Those two.
Yeah.
The last month. So
the game against NYC, the first leg, that assist, it was a layoff from Alex to Christian to Rusnak to JMO and then back to Rusnak, and it was like absolutely beautiful. But the layoff between those two, because they just know how to position with each other.
Yeah, Christian's always been a good bonus point producer at a low key level. Joao Paulo and Nico are the big guys, but but
now Christian's getting assists, so that's why I think that he's going to be really good. Plus I'm going to be at that game, so I got to have 6 Sounders.
There you go.
And then my last guy, I'm kind of bouncing around. Like, I really like Mihailovic because, I mean, he's playing Vancouver, who's weak defensively, and he's been producing like a madman. But I'm also eyeing Reynoso this week.
Interesting.
Kind of a random pick out there, but I'm all for people that they just scored and they opened their account.
Yeah.
Which a lot happened this weekend. Rusnak just scored, Gall just scored, Seba Ferreira just scored, and Reynoso just scored. So that's at least 4 big names that just scored and they're ready to start producing again. And having a home game against Colorado, I feel like that's a spot where he can make a move.
Yeah, Colorado's a good defensive team, but they're not the powerhouse that we expected coming into the season that perhaps they were last season. At least like consistency wise, like you can score on them. Yeah.
Yeah, I see that as like a 3-2 or 4-3 game.
Sure. Yeah, I think you're probably right. Blaine, do you want to touch on some of the names that you like and maybe some names that we left out?
Yeah, and I want to kind of piggyback off of Tyler. I love what Roldan's doing to start the season, but I also like the way Roldan plays when Seattle rotates some of their guys. If Ladero gets sat, if Paolo gets sat, I mean, if Rusnak, I mean, just depending on what goes, he becomes one of the more focal playmakers for that team really quickly. So he's a cheap option in rotation, and that's why I have him in there. Is if this was a full-strength team, I would probably not be taking him. I know his numbers are there in all competitions, but with the rotation, I think he becomes one of your safer options. And I know there is worry that he gets subbed out early, but that's why I like him. I'm going back to Zella again this week. He's top scoring player in the game. That means a lot. He's beating out some other big name guys for that title right now. Just his average he's the only guy averaging double digits on the season so far. And that's really hard to shy away from, given that they're playing Orlando without Antonio Carlos. This is a defense that has not been as good on the road, is missing their best player. This is a recipe to jump in on this And for that reason, I'm also really considering Etienne Jr. as my fifth midfielder as a bench role. I think this is a spot where Columbus really needs to get some goals, really needs to kind of put their foot back on the gas. And this is a game where they can do it at home. I like this one. I would probably have doubled up on Columbus defenders, given that I like this as one of my stronger clean sheet shouts. But I like the pairing in midfield so much more. I think there's so much more upside on this one. And the game's timed early enough where you can do that and swap into somebody else. You can still have them on the bench and go to somebody else. And I know we've missed a lot of names. I've been all over the place this week on who to look at. I think Lewis Morgan for Red Bulls could be a good option to throw out there.
Not cheap, but could be could be good for sure.
Good option. I like the matchups fairly okay.
Yeah.
If Gazdag's healthy, I like Gazdag on the road. I think he's one of those guys. This was a week where wasn't just like, oh, there's 5 or 6, 7 midfielders that I want. I had kind of 4 that I really wanted, and then after that it was like, okay, who's the next best available? Along those lines, Sifu from LAFC is another guy that I've really considered. It's so late. He's probably the guy that you put in your lineup, and if none of your bench hits, you leave him.
He did get fake hurt. Do you know what I mean by that, right? Like, it looked like they were going to have to sub him out early. They didn't. They taped him a bunch. I haven't seen how he's doing in training, but
he also hasn't gotten more than 2 since week 1, I think.
Yeah, just a semi-injury to pay attention to, because
then I don't think you can go wrong with an Austin player this week in your midfield either. Yeah. If you're trying to break a tie, you're looking for somebody else to fill in. Mm-hmm. Yes, this is a road game, but this is DC, who has not been bossing it in the midfield. These guys are going to pick up some bonus points that way. They're going to see a lot of the ball. Even if they don't get the big offensive production, they're still going to see enough of the ball to put up some bonus points.
And they're on some heavy rest, right? Like, they had a bye this last week, and we had the international break before that. So they haven't seen a team in, 4 weeks? Yeah. Yeah.
It's really, if you can afford Driussi, I think he's your number one. But if not, these other guys are putting up such good averages, and they're a little bit cheaper. You've got some options here. And I think if you're struggling to find that fifth midfielder or whatever, turn into an Austin guy. This week is not a bad week, even though it's a road game.
Yeah, absolutely. Strikers, we were all over the place with this one. I'll say, I think the only consistent name that all 3 of us had is Rui Diaz, but I say that with such an asterisk again, because he just got back from injury. He's going to go as long as humanly possible on Wednesday for sure, unless the Sounders put it away early and start subbing. So I do worry about both him and Morris for rotation. He also hasn't gotten on the score sheet at all yet this season, but that actually makes me like him more. Tyler, I don't know about how you feel, but when that man gets hungry, that's actually when I like him.
There's
a
reason he has the assassin nickname.
Exactly. So he is our only a consistent consensus pick. But Tyler, who else do you like this week in the striker spot?
I am apparently way different than you guys looking at this. I'm riding the train with who I suggested last week in my article and grabbed because he got a brace. Sebastian Ferreira for Houston. He opened his account. He's a DP. He has the confidence, and he's playing against the Portland team they love to counterattack. You just gotta get them on the counterattack and then re-counterattack. You know, you just gotta. It's like Inception, you know.
Sure.
Or just break them down because Portland has not been good defensively this year.
Yeah.
So I'm big on him. I'm also kind of looking at Jesus Ferreira, but I think Rui Diaz is just a better option. And Jesus, I believe, is on the road. Yeah, on the road to the Red Bulls. They've been pretty sound defensively, so I don't think I'll go Jesus, but he's just one of those, like, shout out to him.
Yeah.
I'm currently on Gola Kamara because Austin is another team that looks really weak defensively.
They're rotating a little on that back line, right?
And with Cecilio Dominguez out, their midfield, I know you said to grab one of the Austin midfield, or Blaine said to grab Austin midfield. I don't like their midfield with Dominguez gone because they looked broken in this last week. Like, I know that Drissi was putting up some numbers, but aside from that, they looked like distraught in this whole game.
They definitely rotated heavily this past week, right? Like they started 2 different defenders that don't normally start. That midfield was a little different. Yeah, it was a weird lineup.
And I got to give a shout out to Kyoto because it's a rivalry against the weaker Vancouver defense. Kyoto is a very good pick. He also splits corners if Mihailovic is not on the field.
And he's affordable, right? Let me look him up. He's not.
I mean, he had that red card, so his value dropped a lot.
8.3, yeah.
And then I'm on team Never Vela.
No, you're with Blaine. You guys are outnumbering me. Okay.
I'm on team Never Vela.
Let's talk about it.
Yeah. Glad I've converted another one.
There you go.
I'm hearing more and more support for that view. I know Patrick Smith is on that with us too. The Never Vela train is real. It's not that he can't.
I grabbed him last week, and now I'm on Never Vela.
There you go. You're mad he scorned you.
It's not that he's a bad player, but I know it was brought up in Discord that maybe there's an injury that they're not disclosing about him.
No, he just isn't signing a contract. I don't think it's an injury. I think he's just being a powder.
No, he's leaving at the end of the season. It's not that he's not.
He might leave
it's
this
midway.
Summer. Yeah, it's summer.
His contract is only through June.
Yeah, he's leaving at the end of this. Maybe he's hurt, which is what I've heard rumor that he's got a nagging injury. Maybe he's just done with MLS.
I think he's holding out too.
I mean, he knows
he doesn't want to get hurt because he wants to get transferred.
Yeah. So.
So hear me out on this one part, and then I promise I won't talk about him when it's my turn. Did you watch El Tráfico?
Yes, I did.
Okay, so I know those points didn't equate to fantasy, but if you watched that game, don't you want him this week against an SKC team that is plugging a lot of holes defensively and on the midfield? Do you know what I'm saying? But this is a home game in the bank.
I know, but it's also El Tráfico where he wants to show up because he's playing. That was the first time Cheech and him have played
ever. Yeah, but I mean, this is a Western Conference team, and they're all going to be pissed off to have lost that. I'm not on the always Vela train, but his price is the one thing.
Situational Vela train.
Yeah, I'm on the when it's convenient, and I think he'll hit Vela train. I don't.
I'm on team Never Vela now.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair.
I was on sometimes, and now I'm on Never.
I get it. Blaine, who else do you like?
Yeah. I put it down in the sheet wrong, but Kyoto was one of my early ones this week. I liked the first game. I like the matchup against Vancouver. Montreal's been playing well. He is their number 1 striker most of the time. If he doesn't start, I would probably be willing to switch to Kai Kamara on the bench just because it's that first game. Kamara has already scored with this team. Yeah, cheap. It's just there's so much going for this early Montreal game to throw a bench player here. So Kyoto, Kamara, whoever starts, I like both of them. Kyoto's definitely the better player if they both start together, which is a possibility that they both start up top. Montreal's doing some weird things this year.
Yeah.
I'm on the Rui Diaz train, but that may change before the start of the week just because that game is so late. And I don't know who I would pivot to as I see that lineup. I worry about rotation. He has not started every game. If he was starting 100% lock for me against
he wasn't healthy until last week. So
yeah. So it's one of those. If they play him midweek, they may rest him because he's just not been there. Don't want.
I agree. I think if it's a rest, it's probably Bruin up top because they like Montero more as a mid role lately.
I think if you look at when players got subbed in that Wednesday game, will tell you when who Schmetzer will start. If they're going
It'll
up.
depend on the score.
Yeah, they're going up 3-1. They're going into New Jersey up 3-1. Seattle is. So if they can put a goal or 2 optimistically, right? He'll start subbing. That's how Schmetzer does, right? So he's not going to try to run up the score. He'll start subbing out and playing the kids. So depending on how that game goes, I think should dictate where Ruidíaz is in your lineup. You'll know by Wednesday, if that makes sense, right? Because you're right, Blaine. What would you do if you had him and he didn't start? You can either pivot to someone on Miami, which I don't think you do, or the Sunday games, or Bill or Freddie. So, I mean, he might even be. This might be like strategical, but he might even be a bench play just to see if he starts, so you can change him to somebody else and just do you see what I'm saying? Yeah. It's a lot of money to keep on the bench, but because of rotation, if you don't love any other option, I would pivot to Carlos Vela, but you won't. So
yeah, and I just
hey Blaine, you can pivot to Taddy.
Yeah.
A guy who hasn't scored in MLS yet this year.
Hey, neither has Ruidíaz, so it's a like for like swap.
And then the last guy I like is an early bench play. I am considering going to Buxa this week.
Is he healthy?
No, I think he was suspended. I don't think it was an injury. I think
he did have a red.
He picked up a suspension, so that was a red card miss.
You're right.
So he's healthy, coming off of 2 weeks off, maybe 3, depending on that. Like, he's had some time to sit. It is Charlotte. I know what you said. I agree that they're not FC Cincinnati that you're picking against.
Yeah, but they're not DC United or Philly.
Yeah, it's still you've got one of the best playmakers in the game with his best striker going into the expansion squad, with a midfield that is a little bit younger, a little bit greener, not quite used to MLS. This is a game coming off a loss. If New England's going to turn it around, they've got to start winning these home games. So I think this is the telling week for New England, and I think this is kind of make or break on their season a little bit early. If they start losing these games to expansion sides at home, this is going to be a long season for Revs fans. So I expect New England to come out and kind of boss this game and run up the score a little bit, because if they don't do it here, when are they going to do it this season? And so I'm gonna take that line on it, and so I do like Buxa for this one a lot. And falling back from there, it gets really hard to pick them. I would probably scrub out after that and go with another defender, even on a week where we haven't had good luck with defenders.
Sure. Yeah. I like a lot of the things you guys are saying. It's actually helping me look at some things that I wasn't really thinking about. I also, just to throw it out there, and it's a little homery, but also in the same vein as the conversation about Christian Roldan, I like Jordan Morris this season. Those stats haven't really clicked in for MLS, but like Tyler said, if you look at his whole production across CCL, because of how the Sounders have rotated and because of his kind of lack of playing and fitness in MLS, I just like him a lot. He's almost $2 million cheaper than Ruidíaz. He's playing as an attacking winger, so he's getting a lot more touches on the ball. But in the game, he's listed as a striker. So I just really like him. He opened his account in Champions League last week. Depending on this Wednesday game, he's someone that my gut goes to a little bit more than Ruidíaz, but it's hard to discount Ruidíaz at home. That's always the thing, right? He scores at home, unlike a lot of number 9s in this league the past year or two. So I'm not discrediting Rui, but my gut is kind of leading towards Jordan, and then that gives me an extra $2 million to play with. I like Quintero this week. I'm not on the sub Ferreira train, but I feel like a broken record how many times I say this, but I don't ever love to just grab someone right after they have like a player of the week, because I don't often think that they can replicate that right away. His point production until this past weekend wasn't anything I would grab at. And he played San Jose, who is so, they live in the chaos. That's their whole vibe. So I think he's definitely going to be worth the pickup, and we'll start talking about him more and more. But I just kind of like Quintero a little bit more for the consistency going into this week. And I'll say it again, he's so much money and he's so underproducing, but I do kind of like Carlos Vela this week. If it wasn't the last game of the week, I think I'd be like aggressive about it, but watching him last week, there is something off, right? It's whether it's a lagging injury or I think he's playing soft, like Tyler said, trying to get out of there, follow the same route as all of his buddies and just, cut out. But I his points didn't produce in what I watched in the Trafico. And so LAFC do tend to respond. And like I said, SKC is plugging a lot of holes in that lineup, in that midfield, and that defense right now. Tim Melia is still a boss, but it's a home game for LAFC. And after they just lost to Trafico, I'm just inclined. A lot of it depends on, is Brian Rodriguez healthy? Is Sifu healthy? And I can't, they're the last game of the week, so you don't know those things. If this was like a middle of the round game, I think I'd be a lot more into it. But for the price he is and where I could spread that around, I don't know if I'll pull the trigger on it, but I'm definitely not on the Never Vela train yet. Like I said, I'm on the ride it occasionally when it seems convenient train.
When it's moving a little bit.
Yeah, when he's got a little momentum, I'll hop on real quick. He does make sense for me this week. It's just the position of the game that makes me not like really into it. Some picks that we might have missed. Again, I think it's worth saying, and Reed will be so proud when he hears it, but the way Atlanta is also still kind of injured, I think Brandon Vasquez he's on the road. I don't think you should start him or captain him by any means, but I think that's a striker who deserves his name to be said here with the production he's having, the shots that he takes in the box. I also think on the other side there, Dom Dwyer, if you can fit him in, is a cheap striker who's going to start. He is goal or bust, but so is Josef Martinez. Dom Dwyer does this thing still. It's so nice to see that he can still do it, where he pisses people off. And he really gets at these defenders well. And that's the one thing I think I can say he still does well. And he's a cheap option for a bench play if you're looking for one. I do think Glenn and I talked about a little bit off there. I think he's a decent bench out, just as someone from Toronto. I don't even know who they consistently are putting up top. I think there's a couple options. Again, for me, that's a bench play. That Philly defense has been stacked. So I don't know if that's something you really want to touch, but they are at home. I think Klamala against FC Dallas is also a decent shout. They couldn't score against Columbus. That was a real bad own goal on Eli Room, but FC Dallas's defense isn't incredible. They're not like a powerhouse coming into Red Bull Arena, especially if Hedges isn't playing. And then there's also that cheap NYCFC striker pair for value, if you like it, of Jason and Magno. Again, for me, this is a bench play. And then Tyler will yell at me. I'm not going to mean it, but I will say it. If you want to look at Renix, if Bo and Books aren't healthy and you want some differential in that New England lineup going against a CLT at home, I mean, he produced. You can't knock him. He produced last round. So Renix at New England, I think, how much is he? Is he cheap? He's got to be
4.9, I think.
4.9, yeah, that's crazy great. If he's starting, I kind of feel like you have to, because I mean they'll sub Josie in at some point, but he has just been a garbage production for fantasy. So please don't touch him. He'll score now that we said that. But all right, captains. Kind of, I feel kind of bored with what we've chosen, but they make sense. Blaine, what do you like?
Easy pick Itzela this week.
Okay.
I'm on the sometimes heel train. Like even for my lineup, like I didn't have him last week. I went Gald over him, so I got the extra point from Gald there on the base score. I don't trust this New England team enough, and I know what I said about them. This is got to be a good week for them, but I think Zella has the better week this week.
Yeah, the verse games, the home games for Zella have been his best point producing weeks. And you're right, that Orlando defense is good, but not great. So yeah, my instinct looking at the team I built is heel, but I do think I'm falling into the trap. That's why I pulled the armband from him this past round. Is I looked at that lineup and I thought, I'm only captaining him because that's what I think I should do. That's not creative. That's not tactical. That's just always captain heel, and it's not an always captain heel year. So I'm kind of at a loss for where I want to go. I think Zella makes sense. I don't think heel is a bad shout. I think there's some crazy options out there that you could do with someone from Houston or someone from Montreal. But right now I have it on heel, and we'll see how much I balk off that once the round gets going. Tyler?
I'm currently on heel. He's still kind of in that always captain phase, but at the same time, he got shut down against a good defense in the Red Bulls. Charlotte is like I don't know if they're good or not, but he put up 14 against them in week 4, and that was on the road. So I think it's another captain at home for heel with me. There's a slight chance I might go Mukhtar, but I think I'm gonna keep it on heel.
I know at least Reed and Blaine and I hate captaining an away midfielder, but I don't think that Mukhtar at a chaotic San Jose is a crazy pick.
Hold up. How many people captained heel last week?
I didn't, because it freaked me out. And neither did they. None of them did.
Oh, really?
No. Well, maybe Reed did, but I don't think he did. I'm 98% positive. I know. Did you? You did. Oh, I know. I knew Blaine did it. I knew
like
Blaine didn't. I knew that Blaine didn't, and I know I didn't, and I thought that he didn't either. But I mean, yeah. Well, there's a difference between on the road and on the road at Miami, and I think San Jose is that same thing, right? On the road at Miami and on the road at San Jose are comparable.
I also
Mukhtar is producing.
Yeah, I also think it's a heel situation where he's always shown up for us, regardless home or away.
Yeah, for sure. And that's the other thing. I feel like he's owed my captain ban because I pulled it from him this past week, and it would have, it cost me some points. Not a ton of points, but it cost me points. So, all right. Well, I think that even with that guest cameo, I don't know if he wants to add anything in, but I think that's everything we've set out to cover. Do you guys have any plugs for this week?
I am gonna plug Reed for this sweet scarf that got sent my way.
There you go.
It's super comfortable, and I'm probably gonna just hang it like right there.
Yeah, that's a great spot, Tyler. It looks like it's just waiting for it.
Yep.
Speaking of hanging things, I got to shout out Brian Harris, who's been in chat for the first time tonight. Ended up reaching out to me about selling a potential jersey, and that's a 97 or 98 authentic Wizards jersey. I've been trying to hunt one down for years, and I don't know if you can see, but that's still got its tags on it. So Brian really hooked me up, found out he plays fantasy through talking to him about the jersey a little bit. And so massive shout out to him for hooking me up. It's sitting on the wall behind me now. Probably will be there for the rest of the season. My wife doesn't want to take the tags off of it. It's her size. And so we got a really cool piece, but we got a new member in the community now. Hope he joins the Discord soon. I sent him that information as well. So hopefully we can get him into the community, but thank you, Brian. I love having this piece behind me, and I told you I'd put it up, and there it is.
Amazing. I love it. And I will do a courtesy shout out, as always, to Discord. And if you're listening to us and you're not in Discord, get into Discord, because there's a lot more creative, helpful, positive conversation, I think, going on there too. That if you're just listening to us and you're not there, you're definitely missing out on some great banter, some great picks, some great help, some great conversation. So get in there if you're not already. So. Oh, now why am I forgetting? Reed, will you say your goodbye thing? Because I forget it, and I wanted to nail it. And if I'm not going to do it perfectly, I'm not going to do it at all.
And as always, good luck.
Recording stopped.
More of a build-up. I feel like you say some things and then